Hello viewers, welcome to another episode of Low Fidelity Commander. I'm Little Beep, and I just finished playing in this Saturday's challenge, the first Commander challenge since the most recent set of bannings, which included a ban on Edgar Markov, completely wiping that archetype off the map and changing the way that every other deck played in response to that. We also saw the ban on Moxes, making games a lot slower and grindier. There are a lot fewer one-sided blowouts now. And the bannings of Ancient Tomb and Sylvan Library also helped with that a lot. And so this challenge was just the kind of Magic I love playing. Lots of mid-range grind fests, long games with lots of decisions being made on both sides. And I managed to make the top 4 of this challenge. It was a kind of an unpromising start to the tournament, as you'll see, but I really like the current build of Breya I've got going on. In fact, I should probably show you that before we start with the game replays. So the list we're running right now is this matchup right here, Breya. I call it Breya Nate 2018, in tribute to Nate Prodzik, the streamer who inspired me to build the deck in the first place. So pretty standard Breya for the most part. A lot of the cards you'll see in literally every list of this archetype, the counter spells and the Palace Jailers and the Dak Fadens and whatnot. I think the toughest decision I had to make before the tournament was to decide how I was going to balance out the amount of the deck that was devoted to reactive spells, to counters and removal, and how much of it was devoted to proactive spells, the kind of tap out, do something so big and powerful that your opponent can't possibly respond to it type of spell. And I wound up a little more on the reactive side. As you can see, we're running both Mana Tithe and Force Spike and Mental Misstep, so cards that Nate does not run in his build of the deck, but in general, I like having a little bit more reaction. I think Breya is a very strong late game plan. She tends to overwhelm most of what other decks are doing in the late stage of the game, and so not dying early is kind of my top concern. But I did make sure that we had a few kind of game-breakingly powerful spells here that you don't often see in Breya. So I run many fewer Planeswalkers. Planeswalkers, I think, are sometimes a little overrated. They tend to die very quickly against a lot of the partner decks and don't get off enough value here, but we are running some control magic spells because partners are really popular. Pretty much every deck is running quite a few creatures. So we have Legacy's Allure, which is unusual, and Vidalcan Shackles, which Nate loves, is a little unusual, but again, just clean 2-for-1 here. Vidalcan Shackles just 2-for-1's opponents over and over again. If they can't kill it, the game is generally going to be over pretty fast. We also run Yawgmoth's Will, a card that almost everyone has stopped playing if they ever played it at all, but I like it. It's a lot like Emrakul in that it tends to win the game if you play it late, because you're just going to get 3 or 4 spells out of your graveyard. But it also has the virtue that it can be sort of a value card in the mid-game. So even if Emrakul would cost like 9 mana from your situation, you only have 6 lands, it's pretty frequent to have plays that are just Yawgmoth's Will, play a land out of your graveyard, play a removal spell, play a Serum Visions or a Tithe or something like that. And that may not seem spectacular, but you spent your turn getting a 3-for-1. And it's really flexible in that you can kind of use it to get back literally anything you've done that game so far. So it served me pretty well this tournament, but that's enough about the deck list. The last card hiding over here is War of Invention. Good way to go grab Skull Clamp, one of the best cards in the deck. It grabs Pithing Needle, and it grabs Vidalcan Shackles, so has a lot of utility. So moving back to the replays for this tournament. So every game here is really long and grindy. I will try to go through all of them to the best of my ability here. There might be some where I just say, from this position the game is over, but frankly, very few of them are over until the last turn, so guess we'll find out. So the very first match we're up against Dark Diversion, who is also running Breya. So a Breya mirror match, generally defined by whoever draws Dak Faden. If nobody draws Dak Faden, then it becomes a lot more even-handed, and you'll kind of see how we work out our resources this game. So I start with a hand that has no black mana and 2 black cards, but we have enough black sources in the deck. We have Ice that can draw a card, we have Mana Tithe that can shut off an early play, so I think I'm confident we'll get there soon enough that it's not worth mulliganing here. So here we draw Skull Clamp, very promising, although not a black source yet. We can't make much use of it so far. But this Mana Tithe, I'm really glad I have it in the deck, because here they are going to go for a Falwar Stone, and we just say, nope, can't have that, sorry. So we pin them down from casting Brainstorm, which is great because we have this Fact or Fiction, and now our hand has turned out to be very awkward. We haven't drawn any acceleration. We were kind of stuck with a bunch of spells we can't play. We are going to go ahead and ice the Steam Vents, which at least does stop them from playing a 3-mana spell, maybe, but now they have Breya with backup, and now this really hurts. We draw Seachrome Coast This is probably my least favorite deck, or least favorite land in the deck right now. I'm looking for a way to get rid of it. I like fast mana in most formats, but in Commander, especially with Breya, when you're likely to be playing 8 or 9 lands every game, there's a really good chance that Seachrome Coast is just a coastal tower, basically. It comes into play tap blue or white land. So the one change I've made after the tournament is I've replaced these fast lands with the respective pain lands. So I still am running Seachrome Coast, maybe looking to replace it, maybe I'll add another island or something like that, but we have switched out Darkslick Shores and Spirebluff Canal for Shivan Reef and Underground River. So just all the lands should come into play untapped. As you can see here, not being able to cast a Factor of Fiction really sucks for me here. And at this point I think the game is basically over. So our opponent gets to just slam Daretti, which is even worse than Breya, because Breya we could play our own Breya and sort of get back to parity, but Daretti's going to kill my Skull Clamp. Daretti's going to just generate ridiculous amounts of value, then they play Baleful Strix. Okay, so just kind of filling up the board against me, and now, well, I just kind of have to cast this Factor of Fiction, hope they don't daze it. It does resolve. And yep, finally we get lots of lands, but we are just so far behind on board, and that's usually curtains for a Breya deck. And I guess this Dark Diversion turns out to be playing a more standard list of Breya that has like a lot more Planeswalkers, a lot more mana, it looks like, and fewer cards that kind of, if I had this board position against me, I'd have Skullclamp as an option to win the game, I'd have Tezzeret into Skullclamp as an option to win the game, I'd have War of Invention into Skullclamp as a way to win the game. Basically, if Daretti sticks on the board, you should never lose, almost. But so far, we have at least a Thoughtseize. We get to take out the scariest thing that's in their hand, although Breya is definitely the scariest thing. And just so you know, we saw Council Judgment, Force of Will, Badlands, and Jace the Mind Sculptor, which we are not going to let them have a Jace the Mind Sculptor here. That's not going to happen. So, moving on to the next turn, they just go ahead and untap and play Breya, unsurprisingly. We really need them not to have a blue card for this Force of Will also, because if they get to counter my Breya next turn, that would be really bad, because they do have enough mana to pay for Spell Pierce. On our turn, not much we can do besides just go ahead, play our land, play Breya. And the one saving grace here is that we're not that far behind on cards yet. They spent Daretti, I spent a turn using Daretti to kill my Skull Clamp, which I was probably not going to be able to make much good use of anyway this game. So here we have a Breya at least. My opponent's going to sack 2 Thopters to kill it, but I do get 2 Thopters. 2 Thopters is good because 2 Thopters will let me protect Kaya Ghost Assassin later. That's something about Breya that people don't appreciate, is that it's really fun to just throw Thopters at things and kill them, but 2 Thopters is a lot of value. That's worth like 2 or 3 mana in a normal game of Magic. They protect your Planeswalkers, they pressure other Planeswalkers, so here we're just going to take our medicine, try and use our life total as a resource. Opponent played out their Badlands, so we know about Force of Will and Council's Judgment, and then we at the end of turn cast Limdol's Vault, another card that is not super common in these Breya lists, but is just really good at, in situations like this. My board is worse than my opponent's, but I have a lot of lands, and if I can make it so my next 5 draw steps are a lot better than my opponent's next 5 draw steps, we might actually be able to get out of this. In this case, we luck out a little bit. We see that the top 5 cards of our deck actually pretty good. We see Wasteland, which isn't helpful yet, but is a good card to have access to. It's a mana source when you need it, works for Crucible of Worlds when you don't. We have a Braid, which can kill a Breya or an equipment. We have Red Elemental Blast, a great counterspell maybe for Breya later. We have Vindicate, is definitely the most important card in this entire pile because we need to kill Daretti. If we don't kill Daretti, my opponent is always going to win the Breya War because they're always just going to have these disposable artifacts to throw at me. So what we have to do here is hope that the best thing they can do is try to Force of Will the Vindicate, and then we are going to hopefully be able to somehow get them from there. So with our turn, we, I think, stack the pile so Vindicate is on top, followed by Red Elemental Blast. If I recall correctly, it might have been Red Elemental Blast into Vindicate, but because we need to... Okay, we actually get to see the order we put them back, so we're going to put back a Braden Cryptic first, then a Wasteland. So we have a couple lands, so we want to save the lands for when we need land drops, and yeah, we put Red Blast first here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to untap, and Red Elemental Blast, really good counterspell to have in any deck that plays red. Don't leave home without it. I think every deck I played in the challenge today had some blue in it. It's just pretty much universal. So we are going to go ahead and slam Kaya here. So if we play Breya, they're just going to kill Breya again. What I really need to do is get some card advantage here. The one advantage I have is that my opponent is not killing me that fast, and their one source of kind of continual card advantage, this Daretti, which is pumping out tokens every turn. If I can kill that, they're down to just like a Breya and a Council's Judgment, and maybe they just don't have any cards that generate multiple cards. That's kind of how you win these mid-range mirrors. Eventually you have to find some kind of engine that just generates you lots more card advantage than your opponent can get. Right now my opponent's engine is Daretti, and I just want to kill that engine. That's more important than recasting Breya or trying to keep my life under control. I'm going to They're going to keep hitting me, but I need to regain control of the board. So they Force of Will. We Red Elemental Blast. We have a Spell Pierce up just in case, but they don't have anything else, so we do manage to use Kaya here. We're going to use Kaya to, again, just get as much card advantage out as fast as possible. I'd be completely unsurprised if they just killed both my Thopters here, use Council's Judgment on Kaya, etc., etc. So we know Kaya's not going to live, but she's a 3-for-1 here. She takes out their land that they drew, and every land does matter in these Breya games. Being able to play Breya over and over again is really important. So they're going to go into Kaya, and we think about blocking Baleful Strix, decide eventually that we might want to protect a Planeswalker later or protect our life total later. Taking one point on Kaya isn't so bad, because they're almost certainly going to have to kill Kaya now anyway. They can't just let me draw another card and have them discard another card. And they have no other good targets for Council's Judgment, so okay, they're going to use Breya to kill Kaya instead. I'm actually kind of glad of that. The artifacts are a really good resource. They can be used at instant speed to kill stuff. And this Council Judgment has no good targets right now. It's not going to have any great targets in the immediate future. So here we draw our Wasteland, and we are just going to need to Vindicate this Duretti and pass the turn. We can't do anything else. So again, we're sitting here not doing very much, but our opponent only has a single target removal spell that can kill a Thopter and nothing else. So we're just going to, this time, kill the Baleful Strix. Now the Baleful Strix is attacking us. Our life total does matter a little bit. And this subtracts one resource from their Breya. That means if we play Breya, and they want to kill my Breya with their Breya, they have to sacrifice their Breya, which means they have to cast their Breya again. Basically, we're just trying to make them cast their Breya as many times as possible this game until it becomes just unreasonably expensive. And now this turn we're going to cast our Breya again. And we have enough mana floating that we can use Breya's ability if they decide to kill Breya, if they don't kill Breya in response. And that sort of forces them to pull the trigger now. So they're going to go ahead and kill my Breya, but they had to sacrifice a Talisman to do it, which is great. When your opponent is sacrificing lands, every land they sacrifice means that's one more turn later they're not going to have a Breya on the battlefield. They won't have mana for it. So opponent goes ahead, plays their 6 mana Breya. So it's really important to track how expensive your opponent's commanders are at any given point. And here, we actually get off to some nice advantage here. We get to abrade their Breya in response, which means their Breya is going to cost 8 mana next time. And we know we have a Cryptic Command coming up. And because we have Cryptic Command and Spell Pierce, we're going to take their Breya off the battlefield right now and make absolutely sure they don't get to cast it again next time. So here we untap, we have Cryptic, we're kind of both sitting here with Thopters staring at each other. Our life total is lower, so we are not going to be aggressive here. Our opponent ponders for a while, chooses not to attack, which I guess makes sense. They think they have more lands, they think they're going to have the Breya advantage, but unfortunately for them, they just keep drawing lands, and we have the Cryptic Command here. So now we're starting to get really ahead. This Night's Whisper is excellent, and man, Vidalcan Shackle's coming in handy here. Even if you're just fighting Thopter Wars, being able to steal your opponent's Thopters is just incredible. So we could just recast Breya here, but we're going to use Shackles first. Hard to remember what I was thinking during the game. I think I just really want to have Mana Leak open for my opponent's Breya if they try to cast it this turn. And now we can get aggressive because now our opponent can never win a fight between all these Thopters. So they opt to keep their Thopter alive. They're just going to Council's Judgment the Shackles right now, so, you know, very medium. It basically traded for a Council's Judgment, but had forced that out of their hand. That's going to be important. There are permanents we really want to stick later in this game, as you'll see. So they just keep playing lands. We keep playing our Breyas and our mana. We have a Breya now with 2 lands up, meaning if they play Breya, we can kill theirs. And we're just swinging back and forth. And these kinds of games tend to come out to who can either cast Breya more times or find something better than Breya. And right now we've kind of fought ourselves to an even position. And yep, they go for the Breya. We have the Mana Leak right on time. They have exactly 2 lands left, and now they're actually empty-handed. So we have a Breya on board. They have a Breya that they're just going to barely be able to cast next turn, but we have seized a pretty wide mana advantage here in that our Breya is a lot cheaper than theirs right now. We've counted their Breya twice, which means it's just really expensive to play, and every time we kill it, it just gets harder and harder. Eventually it takes 2 turns to ever cast Breya. And then they draw Tainted Pact. Oh, that's really painful. Playing Spell Pierce here might have been a mistake. They, at this point, I'm almost certain they're Tainted Pacting for Emrakul, the Promised End, which against a Breya deck means they get to just choose how we sacrifice all our stuff, which is really bad. We do not have a lot of ways to kill Emrakul. And unfortunately, they have exactly enough card types in their graveyard that Emrakul costs 7. So they have literally exactly enough mana to get around Spell Pierce, still cast Emrakul, but we at least want to make sure that they don't I'm just spell piercing at this point, hoping to reduce their options. If there's any chance they're going for something besides Emrakul, they have a little bit less mana to play around with now. Also, we need to get the spell pierce out of our hand because they're just going to be able to use it on one of our spells if they cast Emrakul. On the whole, it just wasn't doing any good for us. We might as well cast it. So, long story short, they resolved the Tainted Pact, cast an Emrakul, and then at the end of the turn, so this is an important decision this game, we wound up having to sacrifice all our stuff, of course. We can't leave Breya on the battlefield because they can just do whatever they want with Breya. We wound up gaining life twice, going to 19, and hitting the opponent once, taking them to 8. My thinking here was that this turn I'm definitely just going to, they're going to take my turn. Hopefully they just draw land, as you see here, they did. So they don't get to do anything fancy. Then we play Breya, and I'm really hoping that we somehow manage to finagle things so that we can either force them to hold Emrakul back or be able to somehow put them within burn range, basically. Because Breya does represent 3 damage on her own, 6 damage if I draw any other artifacts, and I'm hoping that somehow I can play the game so that I get to untap, play with Breya, and play a Lightning Bolt and kill them. That was probably a little bit silly. I think the math doesn't really work out. I was under a lot of time pressure. I got about 6 minutes left at this point, so what I should have done was just gain life, hope to somehow kill Emrakul, and rely on my life total as a resource for the rest of the game, as it turns out. Hard to say what was best in that point. So they consider casting my Breya for a second, decide better of it, crack my fetch land for no value. We draw Crucible of Worlds, which doesn't do very much right now, so we're just going to play Breya and hope. We're at 18, holding out just barely. Our opponent is going to go ahead and... what did they actually do this turn? Interesting. So I hope the game's not about to bug out. That would really stink. Because my assumption is they just played Breya that... oh no, they didn't have enough mana for Breya that turn. Okay. So they had 11 mana. Had they been able to play Breya that turn, we would certainly have been dead, but instead we rip Snapcaster Mage, one of the few live draws we have, because it lets us go ahead and get Vindicate. And this is definitely wrong because our opponent didn't untap here. Ah, darn. So you don't get to see the end of the game, but just to briefly summarize, we played Snapcaster, Vindicated the Emrakul. Yeah, we're definitely about to bug out here. That's too bad. We played Snapcaster, Vindicated their Emrakul, sat there at 3 life for a while. Then we played Crucible of Worlds. We were able to use Crucible of Worlds to eventually recycle a Wasteland over and over again. We killed lots of their lands. We had the strong board advantage. We played a Breya. They killed it with a series of removal spells. They were never going to be able to cast their Breya again, but unfortunately, I maybe made another mistake. Didn't target their red lands quite aggressively enough, and the turn before we would have killed them, they drew Fiery Confluence and instead killed us. So, an exciting top deck war, both of us mostly drawing lands. You with a Crucible, and me just not being able to quite marshal my resources well enough to kill them before they found something to kill me with. So, I made at least one mistake there, not killing their red sources. They, it's just a really tight game overall. That early game, either of us could have made a lot of decisions differently. But we do lose this one to the power of Fiery Confluence after beating an Emrakul with a lucky top deck. But then we win the next 5 and make it top 8. So let's run through those. None of them are quite as much of a marathon as that first game was. So up here, we're up against Breya again. We mulligan. We thankfully find a land on top. So we are not going to crack this Verdant Catacombs. But it's looking ugly. Again, we're down to 6 cards. Our opponent has a Thoughtseize. Now, I think they made a mistake there. We're down on cards right now. And cards are really the fundamental unit of how Breya games work. Basically, whoever has more cards usually ends up ahead at the end. They chose to take a Talisman, which means that we scried to the top, so they should know we have a land. Anything else we would have scried to the bottom. If they take Night's Whisper, I'm just sitting here trying to play Signets and hoping to draw more lands, because Signets don't really stand in for lands very well. But this way I get to play Night's Whisper, and it's like I've undone my mulligan. It's like we both just draw 7, because I get to spend my second turn just getting my hand back into shape. So we draw the land, get all 4 of our colors here, play Night's Whisper, and now we drew a land and a Signet, which is awesome. So we're going to be able to build up to lots of mana again. With these 2 powerful 5-drops, that's really strong for us. They just go ahead and play a Signet. And now we're always hoping they don't have Daze here. Of course, Daze would be devastating in any of these positions. But we do get to play 2 Signets. Now we have 5 mana up. So they have a decision to make. They do wind up just playing Breya. And that gives us access now. We've drawn Counterspell, which is amazing. So we've drawn very well to get back into this game. And now we get to play Breya with Counterspell up. So now whatever they do on their turn, we can hopefully stop it. And then we are untapping with both of us just having Breya and us having a pair of just extremely powerful 5-drops. So we slam Breya here. Had we not drawn a Counterspell, if we had just drawn another land or something like that, we probably still play Breya in this position. It's just a little worse. If we don't draw a land, yeah. So we're playing Breya no matter what in this position, but having the Counterspell up is really nice. They crack in. We just trade Breyas. We'd rather not take the damage at this point. Our hand is very good, and so we're basically ahead on mana, likely to be able to get ahead on cards with what's in our hands, so we're just trying to keep our life total reasonably high and just keep the board nice and clear. Alright, so they do have Duretti. Duretti's really good, but we are going to counter it. And now, there's a good chance they have a counter in hand. They have 2 blue up. But they know we have 2 really good 5-drops in our hand, and so they just let Duretti go here. So this is annoying because they almost certainly have a counter at this point. We just wind up leaving things up. We have Mystic Confluence. We can stop a lot of the things they might try to do. So the fact that we have a Mystic Confluence means they have to make plays with at least 2 mana up. They can't Force Spike it or Mana Tithe it, so they've got to have a real counter. They end up just going for Kaya Ghost Assassin, which is really good. That is a lot of card advantage. Really stinks, so we'd have to try and Mystic Confluence it. Nothing else we can really do here. I did consider using Fire Ice to kill both their Thopters and then trying to attack Kaya with my Thopters, but they still end up with Kaya on 1 loyalty, and then they get to play Breya, and it's just really ugly. So we're going to have to get them empty-handed, basically. They have the miscalculation. They're able to use Kaya, and again, it just looks like we're in a terrible spot. Our opponent has a Planeswalker, 6 mana, 3 cards. We have 6 mana, 1 card, no Planeswalker. Otherwise, the board's even. We get the first turn. Let's see what happens. And we rip Vidalcan Shackles. Excellent. Alright, so this Vidalcan Shackles means that later on we're going to get to win the Thopter War. Right now, we just need to use Tezzeret. And we could have grabbed Skullclamp and tried to draw some cards, but Kaya is just so devastating. We're just going to grab Pithing Needle, pray they don't have any artifact removal, and just name Kaya, get her off the board. So basically, Tezzeret has traded with Kaya. Pretty good Planeswalker there. And next turn, Tezzeret can grab something like Skullclamp, except for that Tezzeret's getting Council's Judgmented. Had I been my opponent, I might have considered just Judgmenting the Pithing Needle and using Kaya again or something like that, because Kaya is really good in a straight-up fight, but of course my opponent doesn't know what my Tezzeret targets are, and I have no idea what's in their hand, so it might well have been the right play. Then they play an Is It Signet. They're just trying to build up their mana, but they still can't use Kaya, so this is really good. Alright, so they just have a lot of mana, which will be nice for playing a Breya next turn, but we're still surviving. We have some mana too. We have Vidalcan Shackles, which tends to help you win Breya Wars pretty well. And because we don't have enough mana to play Breya and use the ability here, we're just going to use Shackles. We want to kill Kaya before they can find an Abrade or something like that, make sure that Kaya is never going to be a threat we have to worry about. The Pithing Needle we can just use for Breya sack fodder later, so we just need to... Oh, Tainted Pact again. Yikes. So I have not been playing Tainted Pact in my deck because we run land tax and 4 basic islands. I could change the basics to 2 basic islands, 2 snow-covered islands, maybe even cut one of the islands for a different basic land. That would make it much easier to play Tainted Pact, and I should almost certainly do that. Anyway, they're Tainted Pacting, and they could just go for Emrakul. They have an instant, a sorcery, a Planeswalker in the graveyard. They have 8 mana here. Emrakul will basically kill me when it comes down. I think that would have been a wise choice. They could Tainted Pact for another Planeswalker, but after a lot of deliberating, they just go for an Abrade here. And I think this choice probably... They're trying to get rid of the Shackles, which makes sense. Vidalcan Shackles is a really annoying, scary card to play against, but frankly, another Planeswalker, something like a Jace the Mind Sculptor, would just wreck me anyway here. We can't possibly get through Jace and Kaya with what we have right now. Anyway, they take Abrade, and then they use the Abrade to kill the Shackles. Just getting their Thopter back, playing another Felwar Stone here. So, again, back to both of us having 0. Our opponent could also have abraded the Pithing Needle and used Kaya to start just killing Thopter tokens. I suppose the problem with that play is that they don't know I could just draw an 8th land to play Breya, kill their Planeswalker, and then we still have the Vidalcan Shackles. So abrading the Shackles was probably right. This turn we get, again, pretty lucky, so we could have had a land to go for Breya and then have Breya's ability up, Instant Grip, Ancestral Vision. So we get to suspend that, play Breya, and now our opponent needs to find a counterspell in the next 4 turns, or they're toast. Ancestral Vision, also one of those cards not every Breya deck plays, but it's just incredible. It's the best thing you can do on turn 1 most of the time. It's just play it, for sure. So they're going to play Breya. Again, now we have the Breya Wars, where both of us just have lots of Thopters, lots of sack abilities. My opponent's going to be trying to keep my Breya off the board as much as possible, which is fine. I do get to play it if I ever draw a land here. And again, not sure about the wisdom of that. Thopters are very valuable, so it's really hard to tell. You know, mostly I think my opponent just wants to have a Breya, and for me not to have a Breya, so they get to make lots of decisions. And they're keeping me from being able to make decisions about what to do with Breya, trying to keep any Planeswalkers they might draw alive, for example. And so it kind of makes sense. But here, they've used their Thopters to block. I've been attacking their Kaya, and that means they're actually forced to start throwing Signets and such at Breya. And that's really bad, because now it's going to be much harder for them to recast their Breya. I mean, we can't cast ours for a couple turns. We need to draw 2 more Milans or Signets or something, but They'll, at this rate, not be able to cast their Breya ever again. So we draw Force of Will, not a bad one. Just having a counter for whatever they might top deck is nice. This turn we are not planning to block with Thopters just yet. We need to kill Kaya, so we're just going to attack with all 3 Thopters. They draw a Baleful Strix. We could force it. We'd rather not. This 1/1 is just going to trade with one of our 1/1s in the end. And we'd rather force whatever scary thing they might be about to draw. They play Boros Signet. We don't care right now. Because they've been sacrificing their Signets, their mana is not a huge concern of ours. So we're just going to wait and see if we can use this Force of Will to help us resolve our Ancestral Vision. We could Taxian Probe them. They have no cards in hand, but we just want to cycle. Play our land. So now we're 1 land away from playing Breya again. We still have this Force of Will, so this Ancestral Vision, which comes down next turn, is pretty much certain to resolve. And thank goodness we held Force of Will, because they have Skull Clamp. Skull Clamp, really good one. If we had Force the Strix, they wouldn't have had targets for it, but it's still a really scary card. They could just rip a Bitter Blossom. They could play Snapcaster Mage and draw 2 cards. They could replay Breya at some point in this game and draw 4 cards. You just don't want to ever let Skull Clamp sit on the table here. So Ancestral Vision finally ticks off Suspend, and then... Alright, things are looking pretty good. So we draw a Daze, which is pretty bad, an Is It Charm, which is good because it lets us discard the Daze, and a Snapcaster Mage, which is great because we can use it to flashback a Mystic Confluence or something like that. This turn we just slam Breya again. Our opponent can sack the Baleful Strix, but they also will have to sack their own Breya if they want to kill my Breya again. So we're fighting a top deck war here. And wow, they just kill my Breya before I can ever untap with it. Which means they do get to cast their Breya yet again. Oh no, the game bugged out. Okay, so this game was also very interesting, and unfortunately Magic Online just can't seem to keep it together long enough, but they played their Breya again. I used Snapcaster Mage to attempt to flashback a Mystic Confluence on their next turn, countering bouncing the Snapcaster Mage and drawing 2 cards so I could play Snapcaster again. They unfortunately top deck a Fire Covenant, kill my entire board with it, and have me under a ton of life total pressure. Fortunately, I use Is It Charm, the draw discard mode, to find my own Fire Covenant just in time, kill all of their stuff once they play Breya again, and then finally outgrind them with Breya attacks before they can draw anything to kill me. I would drop to a precariously low life total. I would have been dead to another Fiery Confluence, but this time they didn't have it, and we take the game home. But as you can see, this is a very good position for us, even though we were a little bit greedy, playing the Snapcaster and bouncing it with the Mystic Confluence we flashback from the graveyard. Gave our opponent the chance to counter our draw 2 cards by just killing the Snapcaster. Probably should have just drawn 3. But we did manage to maneuver the game despite that really pretty bad start where they had a Planeswalker and extra cards in hand. We eventually used Vidalcan Shackles and a bunch of other kind of 2-for-1 cards to grind them to a place where we had this massive board advantage. So, moving on to game 3 here. So 2 Breya Mirrors to start out, and now we have another grind fest. Every game in this tournament just took a very long time. Hopefully Magic Online can stay alive long enough. So we're up against Leovold. And our hand is kind of clunky, but we do wind up keeping it on the strength of a Legacy's Allure. We get to Gitaxian Probe them on turn 1. The most important thing we see is we see an Exploration, an extra land drop every turn for them, that means. We see a lot of lands, and we see a Time Twister, which means that if Leovold ever gets to stick and they play Time Twister, the game's probably over. But we don't see any way to counter our Legacy's Allure, so we're going to hope to lean on that as a way to get through the game. So they just go ahead and play Exploration. One thing that was nice is that they didn't have the 3rd colored land to play Leovold yet. They had a Dust Bowl and 2 other things, but yikes, here they have a colored land we hadn't seen, so we know they're going to be able to play Leovold next turn maybe. But ain't nothing we can do about it. We just got to cast Legacy's Allure and hope that we can use our Forbid to stop their Time Twister, and then crawl back into the game somehow, maybe by casting Palace Jailer. They play 2 lands, and thank goodness they don't play Leovold this turn. The thing about people who play Dust Bowl, I've noticed this, is they tend to love using Dust Bowl. My opponent has an Exploration. They must feel like they have a ton of lands. They're doing very well for themselves here. But they're spending their entire turn casting Stone Rain, basically. They just played a Stone Rain. It stood in for their land drop, too, so they have now 3 lands. I have 1, but my opponent has no idea what's in my hand. For all they know, I might have like 4 lands in here. I don't know. It just seems like you should play Leovold and just ruin my ability to do future things. Like, look, this turn I get to cast Night's Whisper, which is excellent. Draw 2 more cards that are going to be useful to me later. My opponent could have Leovolded me and stopped me from doing that kind of thing. Anyway, they also let me get another counter on my Legacy's Allure by extending the game out a bit longer. So here they play Search for Tomorrow out. And technically, if they do have 2 lands, they can just Leovold me and Time Twister me and kill me, but The fact is, I haven't seen, at this point, all the lands I know about in their hand are gone, and I'm really just hoping that they haven't drawn 2 lands somehow, because they didn't play an extra land with their Dust Bowl last turn. Or sorry, they did, but they would have had to draw 2 lands. I know they have a Dismember and a Time Twister in their hand. As it turns out, the last 2 cards in their hand are not both lands, so they don't get to play Time Twister here, which means I get to hold up Forbid. So still just sitting here, hoping this Legacy's Lure will get us most of the way there. They're going to attack with Leovold. And they have an interesting choice here. They could either play Time Twister and hope it resolves, or play Maelstrom Pulse and try to take out the Legacy's Allure. They go for Maelstrom Pulse, which I guess makes sense. They're probably assuming I have a counter, and maybe they just really want to resolve this Time Twister. And we just go ahead and cast Forbid, and because we're scared of our opponent resolving the Time Twister, and we're about to take control of their Leovold, we get to use the flexible buyback mode of Forbid, which is what makes this version of Cancel way better than Cancel, or Disallow, or anything like that. So we have this War of Invention and this Fellwar Stone, and we're probably just never going to play either of those cards. It seems really unlikely that unless we stabilize, the game's going to get to a point where either of those is useful, because we really want to play Palace Jailer next turn. The other option we have is we could discard like War of Invention and Snapcaster Mage, and then next turn play Fellwar Stone and still hold Forbid up. That might have been fine. In this case, I'm just trying to discard the clunky cards and keep Snapcaster because it's really flexible. Although, frankly, maybe it would have been better to discard Snapcaster than Fellwar Stone. We don't have that much worth flashing back just yet. So here we draw Mother of Runes. So we have an interesting choice. We could either play Mother of Runes and forbid the Time Twister, or we could just play Palace Jailer and go after their Leovold right now. The fact that they did not counter my Forbid, and that I know they have a Dismember and a Time Twister, makes me think that their 1 card left that I don't know about probably isn't a counterspell. So we are going to take a shot at it. Here's Palace Jailer. Can you stop it? We're going to draw an extra card, but at this point, the jig is up. So we get to keep our Legacy's Allure around, which is amazing. Most decks do not have very many ways to kill enchantments. Our opponent dismembers their own Leovold for some reason. Unclear why that was the case. They may have been trying to, I don't know, maybe they thought that was going to bring Leovold back. It's not quite how Palace Jailer works. So our opponent plays Intuition here, which must have been what they top decked. And here the fear I have is that they're going to Intuition and go get like Life from the Loam and Wasteland or something like that, and just start killing all my lands, which might be kind of awkward, because even though we have a lot of card draw, we are a little bit pinched on mana at the moment. But they just go for what looks like kind of a random value package. It looks like they are... So definitely we're not going to let them have Crucible Worlds, not with Exploration and Dust Bowl. So we can either give them Vendilion Click or Liliana the Veil. Liliana is maybe a little annoying to play against. It can kill Palace Jailer and then use the discard ability a bunch of times. We do just get to play Breya, which makes Liliana pretty bad. So it's possible I should have just done that. My fear here is that if they do, for example, play Liliana here, and then it turns out they have like a Wrath or something like that, Liliana's ultimate could be a threat, or Liliana could just tear my hand apart, and my opponent could find something like Life from the Loam to get me. In any case, I just take Vendilion Click. It's the least scary card they have, and we can use Legacy's Lure to take it. So they're going to try and get the Monarch with this Vendilion Click, but Legacy's Lure is an incredible card, so they're not going to be able to. Our opponent looks over our hand, takes our hard counter, which makes sense. They need to resolve something to actually win the game here. We draw Tithe, which gets us 2 lands. Tithe, by the way, often an underappreciated Magic card. It just it looks like a bad lay of the land or something. It's a card that gets you a land, but the fact that in a situation like this, I get to make my next like 3 land drops, because I drew a land and then had the Tithe to get 2 more lands, is really awesome. A lot of these games, as you've seen, just come down to who can play the most lands without running out of lands, and Tithe is a really good way to get value in that way. Lets you keep 1 land hands, just a all-around card I would not cut anytime soon from the deck. So here, they Vendilion Click, take our Forbid. We're just going to Snapcaster Gitaxian Probe to see what's going on, and we just see Time Twister and a land, which is awesome. That means that we can just take their Vendilion Click later with no fear. They're not going to like Wrath us or do anything crazy. They try for Time Twister, and I'm like, okay, sure, they don't have a Leovold out. They can never get a Leovold out as long as we have this Legacy's Allure, so I think they're just trying to force the issue. They play Anvil of Bergarden and Jace Vryn's Prodigy. So, they had a neat draw off the Time Twister, but unfortunately Anvil of Bergarden just, without Leovold, you're just, both players are looting each turn and your opponent gets the first loot. That's really not great. And as you can see, our hand here is just kind of crazy. We have everything you could ever possibly want. We have Forbid with a lot of cards to buy it back with. We have Sword of Feast and Famine to end the game really quickly and get lots of mana. We have our Lightning Bolt to make sure their Jace doesn't get to do anything. Overall, just a tremendously good hand off the Time Twister, but even so, given that we have the Monarch here, and a Mother of Runes, and a pretty good clock with this Vendilion Click, most hands of 7 cards would have gotten us there, but this is a particularly good one. So we go ahead, discard the Jace. We're probably not going to find time to use that. I want to make sure all my plays are playing to the board. And again, the thing that I could lose to here, you always might think in Magic, how could I lose? The thing that could get me here would be a sweeper. Could be my opponent just has a Toxic Deluge in hand, they kill all my creatures, play Leovold, maybe get the Monarch back somehow. But I just want to kill them as fast as possible, deal lots and lots of damage, and make sure that I have Forbid up here. So we could have played Breya there, but I just want to keep up counters, make sure that a Wrath effect doesn't get me. I'll play Land Tax for good measure. That's going to draw me another huge bundle of cards to use with Forbid next turn. And now we have Toxic Deluge, which briefly makes me wonder if I'm in danger. Toxic Deluge will kill you if your opponent has an Emrakul and kind of catches you with it trapped in your hand. But thankfully my opponent is, with Sorcery Creature Land, still a couple of mana away from casting Emrakul. They could have gotten it that turn, but it was pretty unlikely. And instead they're just going to cast Leovold. We can't counter it because they have Cavern of Souls, but it doesn't matter too much. We have a 3/1 flyer. We're going to have a 4/4 Palace Jailer equipped with a sword that they can't block, and a Snapcaster Mage that, thanks to Mother of Runes, has protection from blue. And so we just get to kill them now, and there's nothing they can do about it because we have Forbid. With buyback, we cast Forbid twice. And now they just scoop it up because they're dead on board. Alright, so again, the key play that turn was my opponent playing Dust Bowl instead of playing Leovold. If they played Leovold there, I don't think there's any way I come back from that. And also the turn where they played Intuition and went for kind of 3 cards that did not match up well against what I had on board. It's possible that they maybe should have just Intuition for Emrakul or something if they had it. But again, a lot of these Leovold decks sort of skimp on late game cards. I find that you really do need an Emrakul or a Primeval Titan or something just to clean things up once you've kind of ground your opponent down. Otherwise it's too easy for creatures on board to just kill you. So that was round 3. I feel like all of these games have gone for like 15 turns or something. Moving on to round 4, we have what is probably the shortest game of the tournament. Still a real grind fest, so we're up against Leovold again, and my opponent makes some really aggressive plays this game. So we have a handful of lands and 2 sweepers. I keep it because we can kill a Leovold quickly with it. My hope is that because we're on the play, I really want them to go turn 1, Birds of Paradise or something like that, turn 2 Leovold, and then we just Toxic Deluge, sweep away all their stuff, and grind them out with this Cavern of Souls. If this Cavern of Souls had been any other land, I almost certainly don't keep the hand, because we need to be able to cast Breya safely. Cavern of Souls lets us do that. So they go ahead, and on their turn, they're just going to crop rotation for Wasteland and kill my land. So our opponent just 2-for-1'd themselves, hoping they could mana screw me, not having any idea what's in my hand, and alright, I just draw a Lightning Bolt, which is pretty good, and play one of my 4 remaining lands. So, and then our opponent plays a Dryad Arbor, which, I don't know, it seems a little iffy. This Dryad Arbor could just die to so many things that I could have. I could have Swords to Plowshares, Lightning Bolt, I could be one of the Breya decks that plays Chain Lightning, Flame Slash. I just feel like if your hand has mana that's that sketchy, maybe use the Dryad Arbor to sack crop rotation because, that way at least it's not going to die to a burn spell. In this case, I happen to have the Bolt. I do kill it. And now I have 2 lands to my opponent's 0. I still have no plays to make, but that's fine. We're just way ahead here. So we just keep playing our lands, not doing anything. Fire Covenant will let me kill more mana dorks if I have to. And they play Life from the Loam. Okay, so this is interesting. They've now gotten back their Wasteland. It makes sense that they fetched it out so early now. Still think the time was a little off, but whatever. And they do get to start Wastelanding me, but the problem is they don't have any cards on the board right now. Life from the Loam was a good card advantage engine, but this turn I'm going to play Breya. And Breya kills you really fast. You can't be playing around with Life from the Loam if Breya's down. We draw Tezzeret, which is excellent. One of our good 5-drops means that if they decide to deal with Breya this turn or something like that, we can just play Tezzeret, and then Crucible of Worlds will let us avoid Wasteland problems for the rest of the game. Opponent drops Courser of Kruphix, which might get them some card advantage later. Right now it's not even a speed bump. We can completely ignore that when we attack. Force of Will is great. Means we have some insurance here. Later if we draw a blue spell. And oop, Tezzeret gets dazed. Okay, so it makes sense that they sort of played the way they did. They maybe were hoping to daze Breya. We hadn't showed them Cavern of Souls yet. But yeah, so this daze hurts a little bit. We still just get to attack for a lot of damage. This Courser of Kruphix. I've tried Courser of Kruphix in a lot of decks, and in a format where there aren't as many fetch lands as a net percentage of your mana base, I find that Courser just rarely does enough. Like, if you're pretty lucky, you get to draw a card off it before it dies, and it's like a 2/4 draw card for 3. That card's playable, but not amazing. And often the worst case scenario is you just miss a land, and your 2/4 is just sitting there not doing much for you. Ramming Up Excavator, which can kind of grab lands out of the graveyard by default and also lock people with Wasteland, is the much better course for Kufix. So they're going to play Wasteland here. Take themselves down to 3 mana to my 4 to kill that. At this point they've almost run me out of lands, but I just keep drawing more. So here we get to Fire Covenant. We are going to take out the Courser just because it can gain them some life, which is annoying, and it might get them extra lands. We have a Fire Covenant, we might as well just kill everything. Our life total is in no danger. And we just keep hitting them. And that's pretty much the way it goes for the rest of the game. They try for things like Crucible of Worlds that are nearly meaningless. We hit them for 6. They're going to use Crucible of Worlds to start getting back Dryad Arbor, which is cute. Keep blocking Breya. We play this land untapped just in case we want to Force of Will something and play around a Force Spike. At this point our life total is in no danger. You might as well have the extra mana just in case. He goes for Song of the Dryads on Breya, which is cute. We're going to force that. They play out a Dryad Arbor. And they do have, more cards in hand than us, but we've just been hitting them with a Breya over and over again. And that's often how Leovold games go. They're very good at grinding, but they have surprisingly few defenses to you just hitting them over and over with a Breya. So we could snap Bolt the Arbor. Again, we're kind of trying to play around a sweeper here. We want to keep our mana up so that if they do go for a Damnation maybe, Toxic Deluge is a little expensive at this point, life-wise, but if they do go for like a Damnation, we can deal 6 damage to them in response with Breya, and then just play Snapcaster Bolt. And then they don't do that, so we just go ahead and Snap Bolt at the end of the turn, and that's the game. So, opponent got kind of an awkward start with their mana, kept maybe a slightly sketchy hand, and it turned out that Wasteland was not enough to stop us because we had a lot of mana. Again, things could have been different. Our opponent did not know what was going on in our hand. They might have been the right place statistically to Wasteland, but just didn't work out for them. So you'll notice that all these games have been really close, and pretty much every one that I lost, I think my opponent could have done something to win. Or every game that I won, I think my opponent could have done something to win. And in the one game that I lost, that first one, I think I could have won by Wastelanding red mana instead of doing whatever I was doing instead, and just keeping them off of that out of Fiery Confluence. So very interesting overall. Here up against ANCA, I believe they are a pro player in real life. Don't recall exactly. They might just be a Magic Online Championship veteran or something. They're pretty much in the challenge all the time. So they start off with a mulligan. We also start off with a mulligan. Our mulligan has 3 lands though, and as it turns out, theirs has 1. So that's advantage to us. We have the option to Bolt the Pilgrim here. We have no idea what's in their hand though, and it could be that killing their Mana Dork is bad because they just play Thrasios and turn out to have a land-heavy hand, and if we can't get rid of Thrasios, they could undo card advantage really quickly. So for now, I'm just going to Duress, see what's going on. Also make sure this Duress has targets later. And it might have been better to Bolt the Pilgrim, but again, if they just play Tymna next turn or something like that, we will gladly just Bolt Tymna instead. Killing the Mana Dorks is not as important as killing the commanders against these decks, usually, I find. Obviously, they now have 1 land in hand, so it turns out this game's kind of an exception. We should have bolted the Avacyn's Pilgrim. So they're going to untap, and they do miss their second land drop, and they're already feeling like they're dead, I can tell. They kind of send a sad message on the chat. But the thing about this deck is because they have the Deathrite Shaman, they have so many mana creatures, if they just find another land, they can get explosive fast. Things can get kind of ugly for us. And you'll see this game winds up being incredibly close, just really tight. So they discard this Liliana the Last Hope they're a million years away from playing. Find a land, it's a tap land, so they can't play Mausoleum Wanderer yet. At this point, their hand that we know of is just Mausoleum Wanderer and 1 mystery card. So we could try to play Palace Jailer. Unfortunately, the Smuggler's Copter means that we are not going to be able to actually keep the Monarch, so at this point it's not worth much. We're just gonna... They can't have a Daze because they have no islands, so we just go ahead and play Breya. It's not going to block the Smuggler's Copter yet. We don't just want to be chumping with Thoppers for no reason, but... we were hoping that Breya would help us get the Monarch down safely, but our opponent's going to start drawing a million cards off this Skull Clamp, which is not the best. So our opponent's card disadvantage is going to be completely mitigated by the fact that they are just drawing ridiculous quantities of cards here, and they have enough mana to start deploying things. So they swing with the Copter, they're getting lots and lots of looting going on, just sculpting their hand. This is not great, we don't have any way to kill the Skull Clamp yet. We can kill like an Elza Deep Shadow with a Lightning Bolt or something like that, but that doesn't deal with the overall problem, which is that they still have a lot of 1 toughness creatures left in their deck. We do draw a land this turn, which is excellent. That lets us play both the Palace Jailer and the Lightning Bolt. So now Palace Jailer hopefully holds on to the Monarch for us a bit. We take out Elza Deep Shadow. We're feeling pretty good now. We've got our card advantage back a little bit. They can keep Skull Clamping, but they do have to worry about the balance between actually having mana and having creatures. So I feel like we played out fine so far. Just trying to get the engines online as soon as possible, draw lots of cards. And at the end of turn, before they can untap and counter something, we just kill the Pilgrim, kill their last thing they can Skull Clamp, kill one of their mana sources. There are no lands in the graveyard right now, so Deathrite Shaman doesn't make mana. So our opponent's untapping with 2 mana right now. And, okay, they hit another 1 toughness creature. They crew the Copter and clamp the Elves immediately, so they're trying to get as many cards as possible in hand, so they have more choices to discard with the Copter. Makes sense, I guess, especially since we can just kill the Elves if we untap with Breya. Gonna clock me with the Copter here. This time we block, we need to preserve the Monarch here. And Judge's Familiar. Okay, so that's another card that can Skull Clamp, which is pretty annoying. Our hand is a little clunky right now. We have a couple of cards that filter, and 1 expensive card draw spell in Factor Fiction. Having either a cheap removal spell or a counter spell would be great right now. We have the choice to possibly Lindol's Vault on our upkeep and sculpt what we draw here, but because we have the Night's Whisper and the Factor Fiction, it's probably better at this point just to draw some cards and see what happens before we commit to a Lindol's Vault. That might be wrong. It's possible I should just kill the Skull Clamp right away, but we'll see. So if we Lindol's Vault, there are probably a few ways we can find to kill the Skull Clamp, maybe an additional way or 2 that would kill the Judge's Familiar and leave them with no targets. Tough decision. This time we just Night's Whisper. We get raw cards going in. Hey, Dack Fayden. That's pretty good. Okay. So now we Dack Fayden. Now we have a choice. So we could either steal the Skull Clamp or steal the Smuggler's Copter. I choose to steal the Skull Clamp. I might want to clamp my Thopter later. Skull Clamp's very dangerous because they can use it to draw 2 cards immediately, and that might actually have been the wrong choice. Right now they can draw quite a few cards off the Skull Clamp, but it's taking them mana and it's taking them bodies to do so. And as long as I keep the Monarch, I can keep up with the Skull Clamp pretty easily. Skull Clamp does not net 2 cards, it only nets 1 card because every time you draw 2 off it, you're sacking a creature you just drew. So it's possible that just taking the Smuggler's Copter is better. It's possible they can kill my Thopter and hit me with Judge's Familiar and take back the Monarch, but as long as I have Smuggler's Copter, I'm looting every turn, and it's really hard for our opponent to keep the Monarch. So I think this was the wrong choice in retrospect. The Smuggler's Copter is going to be a pain in the butt, to say the least. So we just get in with Breya. We have a Palace Jailer on the ground. We expect that we're going to lose the Monarch this turn, by the way, and just take it back the next turn because we have a Swords to Plowshares that can kill a blocker. And now our opponent has another land, and unfortunately has Umezawa's Jite, which is ridiculous here. Remember how I said we couldn't kill an artifact? Well, we still can't kill an artifact, and now this Judge's Familiar is going to cause some problems. So they get in, they're making sure that they kill Dack Fayden and hit me, so I have to choose between losing Dack or losing the Monarch. I choose to lose the Monarch because I can get it back next turn. I just need to kill this Judge's Familiar and make sure that they have to keep spending 2 mana to equip Skull Clamp just to keep ahead in terms of efficiency. They do get Elves Deep Shadow back, and now they have 2 counters in the Jite. That means that if I want to take the Monarch back, I either have to kill the Elves or attack with Breya and Palace Jailer. They can kill the Palace Jailer if they want to with the Jite. So yeah, we're going to have to spend our Swords Plowshares on these Elves, maybe, instead of the Smuggler's Copter. We draw land. Dack into Force of Will is pretty good. A lot of this other stuff's not too helpful. I throw out Remand at this point. Their spells are very cheap, and Remand doesn't really stop much permanently. I'm also more worried about dealing with their board right now. This Jite could kill me by itself if I'm not careful, and so I don't need to worry about what they're casting out of their hand so much as what they're doing with this Jite. So we Dack. We double attack here, and at this point, what I'm hoping is that they will, if they do want to try and kill the Jailer and block the Breya, that they'll use the Jite counters to kill the Jailer right away, so I can Swords the Elf, get that off the board. This might have been a bad play on my part because they could have blocked Breya, removed 2 counters, killed Palace Jailer, kept the Monarch for a turn, and then I'm just sitting here looking kind of awkward, although we at least do keep the Swords to Plowshares in this case. So as it turns out, they just don't block at all. We get to keep our Swords to Plowshares up. We're the Monarch again. And now we can Lindol's Vault in our second main phase, which stacks our deck pretty well and lets us choose what we want to draw with the Monarch, which is great. We get to have an instant on our turn. So we cast Lindol's Vault. Our life total is a slight concern right now. We have a City of Brass and we're at 13 facing a Smuggler's Copter and Umezawa's Jite, so we want to not be too greedy with this Lindol's Vault. As it turns out, the cards we find are pretty good. Fire Covenant kills a lot of creatures. Gitaxian Probe lets us see what's going on in our opponent's hand. This is not a great 5. Having something like an Abrade to kill the Jite would be better, but I'm pretty happy with it. I just want to make sure I can kill their creatures somehow, and Fire Covenant plus Swords Splashers ought to do the trick. So I make sure I draw Fire Covenant this turn, just in case we get a chance to blow them out. No, I choose to Swords to Plowshares here before they can get up a counter. Yeah, so we want to make sure that Fire Covenant resolves. If it doesn't resolve, we've lost a lot of life for no reason, and we might just die. So we want to just take out the Deathrite Shaman, which has the ability to make us lose life with its tap ability. And basically we're holding up a Breya usage right now, so we can kill something if our opponent tries to equip the GT here. Now we have Fire Covenant, so our opponent untaps 3 cards in hand. They're going to go for equipping the Elf, and because if this GT sticks to the Elf, they can just pump it twice in response to Breya killing it. We need to kill the Elf in response here. This does mean they get to crew the Smuggler's Copter, equip GT to the Smuggler's Copter, and then hit me, but the good part is if they do that, they have no creatures left. So the Smuggler's Copter is turned off, we still have enough life to live, and we are either still the Monarch, or we still have a Dak Faden, because they can only attack us or Dak Faden, they can't do both. And so we're just trying to keep creatures off the board and try to make the Smuggler's Copter a non-threat that way. Maybe not the best strategy against a deck with 10 elves or whatever, but we're trying. So they have another land. Thrasios comes down. And now we're going to counter Thrasios. This feels great. If we can just keep Thrasios off the board, they don't get to attack at all, and then the game is very over. But the last card is another 1-mana dork. So they do get to crew Smuggler's Copter, but they're not adding more counters to their GT, which is really important. Really important. It's possible that they were basically hoping that we were tapped out into a counterspell. I think they played well. I think we just happened to have drawn Force of Will after a lot of card selection and such. So now it's still a tricky position. We are at... Dak is dead. Our opponent's at 11, but we can't actually kill them. Breya only deals 3 damage. We have 6 plus 3 is 9, plus they have life from the GT. And we're a little low on resources. We've managed to work ourselves to a place where, again, we should have just taken that Smuggler's Copter. That Smuggler's Copter has killed a Planeswalker, made our life total really low, just been a general pain in the rear. But, okay, we draw that land that we set on top of our deck. Kinda wish it was a Bitter Blossom now, so I might not have stacked super well. We still have this Fire Covenant, though. Making sure to keep the Fire Covenant turns out to be important. We knock them down to 5, and this is really tight. They've taken 16 commander damage, so even if they gain life, 1 more hit from Breya ends it. Or, I guess, 2 more hits from Breya end it, no matter how much life they have. But we're at 11. This is pretty precarious for us. And we are going to need to kill whatever attacks the GT this turn. If they get 4 counters in the GT, our life is just miserable. So they have Council's Judgment. Yikes! That'll kill Breya. Alright. This Timna Thrasios deck does not have a lot of answers for Breya, but Council's Judgment certainly counts. Breya disappears. We could use her ability in response, but unfortunately, it wouldn't work. If we try to kill Elvish Mystic, it crews Smuggler's Copter. Smuggler's Copter picks up a GT, we die. And that's about it. We try to hit our opponent for 3 damage. They just gain life with GT, it doesn't matter. So we were forced to use Fire Covenant this turn. And because we think about, briefly, Fire Covenanting the Elf, but unfortunately, if we Fire Covenant the Elf here in response, they can just crew the Copter, hit us anyway, take the Monarch back, and even though they don't get extra counters in the GT, they will be able to kill our Jailer if we attack them. So we need to basically let the GT land on this Elvish Mystic to make extra sure they don't get to hit us with a creature. We need to keep the Monarch. At least that's the way I saw it at the moment. So we do Fire Covenant here, hit him for 5. They can't pump to say that we had to spend 5 life, which really hurts, because otherwise they could have just pumped it and got more counters in the GT, and that's bad, man. Umizao GT is a good card. Maybe I should be playing that one, I don't know. But here we're just going to hit with Palace Jailer. We can't block the Smuggler's Copter anyway. They go to 2. We're going to play Breya. It's uncounterable thanks to Cavern of Souls. Not that that would necessarily matter, but we do have Breya, and we have 1 Breya ability up. But the thing I'm really scared of now is that they somehow find a way to get through to us with Smuggler's Copter. So they can use the GT counters to kill Thopters. If they can crew Smuggler's Copter, they could then hit me for 3 with Smuggler's Copter, put 2 more counters in the GT, and things could get really ugly for us. So we maybe make a foolish play here. We put ourselves to 3 in order to see what our opponent has, hoping it'll help us make a better decision. This is probably dumb. It's very likely that we will be able to kill the Smuggler's Copter next turn just by sacking Breya, and then our opponent will have no life left and die, because if they kill our Thopters with the GT counters, they have no life left to stop Palace Jailer from just killing them when they're at 2. And putting us going to 3 here means that we are suddenly dead if they can get in with Copter somehow. Possibly dead to something like a Collective Brutality. Hard to say. Again, we wanted to mitigate the risk, see what we could draw. We drew nothing, of course. And so now it's our opponent's turn. This is really tight. They play Timna. Crew the Smuggler's Copter. And we have to decide what to do here now. They did not kill our Thopters first, because if we They could have killed our Thopters before crewing the Copter, but then we get to kill Tymna, and then when they attack with Smuggler's Copter, we get to kill Smuggler's Copter, and then we're killing with Palace Jailer. So they're just trying to draw a card off the Smuggler's Copter, see what happens. We block. We go to 2 life, possibly losing a Collective Brutality. We shoot our opponent. They gain some life in response. They go to 3 to 1 with the GT counter up. And scoop it up. They can't stop us from killing them next turn. That was really tight. And yeah, I think we're definitely some sketchy plays that game. The Gitaxian Probe costing us 2 life for no reason. Definitely one of them. Probably the worst was taking Skull Clamp instead of Smuggler's Copter with Dak Faden. That would have been a much better play in retrospect. Again, see, I had 4 minutes left in this game. It takes a lot of thinking to figure out what to do in some of these situations, and our opponent was also at 4 minutes. So just crazy games here, but the raw card advantage of Breya and the power of Dak Faden win out here. So last round, this one's probably going to be what determines if we get into top 8 or not. We are up against Shatoon, who is playing Crown Tymna. Alright, that's a pretty tough deck. This version of the deck, this used to play lots of small flying creatures. Doesn't do that anymore. It doesn't really rely on Tymna's ability so much. It's just a 4-color control deck playing 2 creatures that can be cast over and over again, and every removal spell and counter spell you can stuff into a deck. So kind of tough for us because we do have, because of the mana rocks and such, we do have some air in the deck. And having a lot of air is really bad against these Tymna decks. So here we keep a reasonable start. The one problem is this Cryptic Command requires a lot of blue mana to use, and we only had 1 island in the opener. So we're hoping to draw some more blue lands later. Our opponent has, this Tymna deck rarely does anything, so it's not like they have a slow start. They're just sitting on counter spells and removal spells forever. They have Cavern of Souls, which would really suck if we were planning to counter Tymna, but fortunately, we weren't. So here we are just gonna, we have the choice between Fire Icing Tymna and Lightning Bolting Tymna. Notice how we did not play the Talisman last turn because they would have countered it, and then we wouldn't be able to kill Tymna on their turn here. So the advantage of using Lightning Bolt is that Fire Ice is a little more flexible, obviously. We might be able to use it to tap one of their lands at a key moment to stop them from casting a spell. We could use it to tap Crown, because we have this Duretti we want to play, and they can attack Duretti with Crown to just kill it. Ice might stop Crown for a turn and give us time to kill it with Duretti. But the other concern we have is that, hey, Fire Ice is expensive. 2 mana is more than 1 mana. I have the chance to spend 2 mana here. Let's just do that. And I think in the end that was a reasonable choice. So here we draw Ancestral Vision, which gives us the interesting choice of whether to just play Duretti or suspend the Ancestral Vision. One thing I'm always thinking about against this deck is Daze. It's one of those cards that will just kill you if they have it early and you're not ready for it. So that's one reason that I don't play Duretti here. Another reason is that if we play Duretti and plus it, and they can't have Mox and Ancient 2 anymore, those are bans, they can't just play Crown, but they could just play a Planeswalker of their own. And Duretti by itself doesn't help that much because it can just get killed by Crown. I'd rather suspend this Ancestral Vision early, get some more mana on the board, and this way we can play Breya and have an extra mana up just in case next turn. Basically just developing mana gives you lots more options in later turns, and so I go for this Talisman here over Duretti. Might have been a mistake, who knows. So they wasteland our Volcanic Island, which really sucks. We kind of needed that to cast our Cryptic Command. We almost wish they'd gone after Blood Crypt instead, but whatever. So we untap here, and we have the option to play Breya, but Breya just getting countered is a huge loss of tempo for us. We would rather make sure Breya resolves the first time. It's a really good card against this deck because they have to use multiple spells to get rid of it much of the time. And if it gets countered, it just is really expensive to play again. So we're just going to go for Duretti here. They have 6 cards in hand. I feel like, again, we're just so far behind. They counter Duretti, of course. We can't stop that. This Force Spike doesn't really help. And we're even on mana. They have 2 more cards than we do. Make that 4 more cards than we do. Painful Truths is horrendous. They're playing around this Force Spike really well. And they, after a while of playing Commander, you get kind of a sixth sense for when your opponent's holding it. And we were indeed holding it. So they've drawn a lot of cards. We're even further behind. We do get the second island. We're getting closer to Cryptic, but our hand here is just so bad. Thankfully, the Painful Truths did give us room to play Breya, so we at least have a little bit of room to maneuver. But they have 8 cards in their hand right now. This is really bad. If they just have a Toxic Deluge to kill Breya or something, we're so far behind. Instead, they Flame Slash to kill Breya. And Flame Slash is okay. I mean, we like having Breya around. At least these Thopters can block Tymna, which is nice. They play Jace the Mind Sculptor, so again, these Thopters would be great. Even if they had the Daze for the Force Spike, the Thopters can at least pressure Jace, and we can bolt Jace, whatever. Alright, Force Spike trades for a Jace. Eventually, just can't play around it at some point, I guess. This Ancestral Vision ticks down a bit, and then, oh man. Yeah, so we had a very good tournament, obviously, had some lucky top decks when we needed them, and here we get Sword of Feast and Famine. You know, probably the 5th or 6th best card in the deck to draw at that point. Skull Clamp would have been better, Tezzeret would have been better, but Sword of Feast and Famine is perfectly fine. So this means we get to attack, force them to discard a card, force them to answer the sword or the Thopters immediately. This means they either have to kill both Thopters somehow, or they have to kill the sword. They don't have a ton of artifact removal, so this is really good for us. They could, of course, just play Crown and hope to block, but then if we have any kind of removal for Crown, which they know about, they know we could have removal for it, we just hit them with the sword again, and that's really bad. So they're just going to abrade the sword right now. They're a little short of being able to play Crown. They're down to 3 cards. They missed a Loon Drop despite the Painful Truth, which is really nice. If they played Crown this turn, this would have been difficult because we would have cast the Ancestral, and then they would have drawn a card off the Crown as well. Now, mind you, I was still expecting to lose the game until that Ancestral Vision resolved. I really thought they would have another counter, because this deck plays like 15 of them, and we would have no recourse against that counter. But they've already used Evasive Action. They only have 1 Counterspell. Other than Counterspell and Cryptic Command, and maybe Negate, nothing they have would have stopped the Visions, because we had enough mana to pay for it, so I guess they just didn't have it. And now we have Yawgmoth's Will. Notice how Emrakul would be completely awful in this hand. It would be a non-card for several more turns, but Yawgmoth's Will is excellent. And here, we're doing great. We have a Tithe we can cast to get 2 more lands, which is amazing. We're sitting on this Cryptic Command, which is great. They don't have anything better to do than just to play Tymna. Fine by me. We're just going to Lightning Bolt her. Goodbye, Tymna. We're going to save this Cryptic Command, not just going to use it to bounce or something. We want to save it as a counterspell. And they're going to Chain Lightning our Thopter at the end of the turn, which is maybe a little clumsy of us. We killed Tymna on the 2nd main phase, which means that now they can Chain Lightning a Thopter, and we can't bounce it back at Tymna, but whatever. We bounce it back at their face. The Thopter living or dying doesn't matter too much. And now we get to play Tithe. 2 more lands out of our deck, so now we're up to 5 cards in hand against the opponent's 2. Really good. They haven't played Crown yet. We've killed Tymna twice. And now we get to play Yawgmoth's Will, so from our graveyard we get to play a land. So Yawgmoth's Will, okay. It's like a Search for Tomorrow, gets a land untapped onto the battlefield. We could play Sword of Feast and Famine here, but I just opt for Daretti. Basically, if they can't kill my Thopter and play a Crown next turn, this Daretti takes over the game, because we can just kill their commanders with it over and over again. Sword of Feast and Famine means if they can kill the Thopter, we just have nothing. So here we need them to have a cheap. They need to have a cheap removal spell, and have enough mana left to cast Crown to go there. So we just end up playing Daretti instead of Sword of Feast and Famine. Hard choice to make. They don't have many cards left in hand anyway. I could easily see it going either way here. And we just play Tithe. Get 2 more lands. And yeah, things are looking pretty good for us. We make an extra artifact here. Now we're feeling pretty comfortable. The nice thing about this Tymna Crown deck is that they don't have Emrakul most of the time. They don't really have a lot of big finishers. So when they get behind on cards like this, it's often really hard for them to come back. So here they do successfully kill a Thopter. Killed already. But they're down to 1 card in hand, 2 mana. I have 8 cards. I just draw Force of Will, which is amazing. And yeah, now we just get to play Breya. They can't counter it. And now we're just going to be able to kill Krom whenever we want to. We can kill Tymna whenever we want to. Our opponent is just... Oh, Palace Jailer. Okay, that's one of their biggest plays left in their deck at this point, now that Jace is gone. So this actually does let them threaten to draw enough cards to get us. They correctly kill the Thopter. If they had taken out Breya and we had gotten the Monarch back, we would have gotten Breya back onto the battlefield, gotten 2 more Thopters. That's really bad. They're going to basically hope, I think, that they can stop me from attacking them and taking the Monarch back. So if they could kill my other Thopter, for example, then that would let them block with Palace Jailer, possibly retain the Monarch. They, at this point, are just going for any source of card advantage they can find. But unfortunately, though they have 2 cards in hand, neither of them is enough to stop me from just attacking here. So I'm okay letting them block with Palace Jailer. That forces them to spend a removal spell on a Thopter if they want to do that. And then I have Cryptic Command up, I have Force of Will up, I can basically counter anything they do next turn and take Monarch back later. So I'm not in a super hurry to take it back. They do get 1 extra card, but yeah, they're not going to block with Palace Jailer. They need to have this Palace Jailer in place so they can get the Monarch back later, maybe. But yeah, at this point, we have just too much stuff going on. We discard a spare land we don't need, we abrade their Palace Jailer on upkeep, and they concede. The only thing we can do left is play Crown this turn. We kill Crown with Breya, and then the game is over. Or, I guess we just Cryptic Command Crown. They don't know our hand, but they know that there's not any coming back from this. So, whew, a lot of marathons there. And I don't think our opponent misplayed anywhere in that game necessarily. I think that they just happened to not have counters that lined up with Ancestral Vision, and that was really where things went south. But this deck, again, has a lot of ability to play early because Breya is a great early game commander, and we have a little bit of removal. And then late game, it's just really hard to take care of the fact that we just have so many ways to draw cards. So we're on to the finals. Going to run through the last two matches here. This has been a marathon video. Thanks for sticking with it. If you have, maybe I'll split it up into two later. We'll see. So here we are in the round of 8. A match against Sebastian Pazzo, very commonly seen player in this format. He's around a lot. And running Thrasios Tymna, so lots of card advantage incoming. The key with Thrasios Tymna is just try not to let them draw cards, I guess. That's how a lot of matchups go, but the thing that people often miss is that Thrasios is much more dangerous than Tymna. Tymna actually needs to connect to draw cards, which is difficult because Breya puts down so many blockers, while Thrasios can just draw cards willy-nilly. And once he gets going, he's hard to stop, because every time you kill him, he's got more lands to play with his ability, he comes back, etc. So our opponent has Mother of Runes, Fyndhorn Elves, and a land drop, okay. 5 permanents on the battlefield, turn 2 to my 4 permanents on the battlefield, but we're still doing okay here, so we can play Breya. Unless they have Force of Will, we're in reasonable shape. They don't have Force of Will, good. Yeah, a lot of games in the Commander format are still very much like, do you have Force of Will or not? What's going on here? Possible Force of Will should be end, I don't know, maybe days, but who can say? Alright, so our opponent's going to play Tymna, and this Mother of Runes, they're in a tricky position here. Obviously you want to keep Mother of Runes untapped, but if they don't use Mother of Runes, they're never going to hit me. Their creatures can just not get through Breya, so they're going to go ahead and say, alright, kill the mom, sure. I'm going to hit you and draw a card. And I think that's the right play. If I do want to kill Mother of Runes, and I have to sack 2 Thopters to do it, I'm losing all my blockers, which is really bad. I don't want to sacrifice my mana to kill this 1/1. Mother of Runes is definitely annoying, but oof, oust. Alright, well, maybe they were just thinking you were not going to have a Breya anyway. Alright, so oust hits Breya. That's a massive tempo swing, so my opponent's board looks much better than me. This is turn 3. This format is very much like Legacy in terms of the pace. So I choose to put Breya back in my library because I can just get it back with Skull Clamp. Again, keeping a cheap Breya is really important. Do not let Breya die if you can help it. If they give you the option to put it in your library, or even putting it into the graveyard if you have a way to get it back is sometimes worth it with Yawgmoth's Will, for example. I'm thinking of playing Reanimate just for that purpose, so I can have Breya go to the graveyard and get it right back. Anyway, so we just get to Skull Clamp a Thopter, draw an extra card, play Breya this turn. Still getting whacked by our opponent's dorks over and over again, but we're just hoping they don't have a big piece of equipment. Oh no. Okay, so a big piece of equipment is one of the ways they can actually get enough muscle on the board to get you. Sometimes raw card advantage isn't quite enough because eventually you can just sweep away their board or something like that. But gross, they have Sword of Feast and Famine, that's really bad. So they get to equip the sword to Tymna, give Tymna protection from blue, meaning that I can't block it anymore at all. Tymna hits. I decide to discard Painful Truths. It's an awkward sorcery speed spell. I'm almost certainly going to want to be holding up a lot of mana during my opponent's turns here just to make sure we can kill things they equip and try to counter things and so on. I just think Painful Truths is a little too sorcery speed and slow for me to use right now. So, okay. Now our opponent goes ahead and just plays their commander, their other commander. So we're both at 4 cards in hand. The boards look relatively even, but the Sword of Feast and Famine means my opponents are really far ahead if they can stop Dack Fayden. Sure hope they can't stop Dack Fayden. If we can take the sword, that would be incredible. We can't. They're going to cast Vendilion Click. Interesting choice. Never loved it that much in my Tymna decks. It's just a little bit fragile, but certainly doing the trick here. So here we have probably the most important choice of the game, which is, do I do something like Impulse now? If I Impulse now, I lose a bunch of mana, which is not great. But I can get Force Spike, I can get Mana Tithe, I could get Daze, I can even get Force of Will. There are a lot of spells I could find here that would let me actually stop the Vendilion Click. At which point we could play Dack Fayden and take the sword and be in a really good position. So I decided to go ahead and Impulse, and then there's the other possibility, which is sometimes if you Impulse, you just hit the sweeper you were looking for. Okay, that works. Toxic Deluge is definitely excellent here. We're going to take that, and now our opponent has the interesting choice of, do you take Toxic Deluge or do you take Dack Fayden? Dack Fayden stealing the sword is really good for us. Toxic Deluge wiping their board is really bad for them. And don't know what's in their hand. I think it's a really difficult choice. And they end up taking Dack Fayden. Alright. And we draw Kolaghan's Command, an answer to the sword, which is really good. The problem with Toxic Deluge on its own is that if they just play another creature, that creature is a huge threat because of the sword. But, yep, draws have been kind to us here. So we're going to go ahead and clamp a Thopter. So it's a little risky. We could have just played Toxic Deluge with the mana up to play around Daze, but then we lose all our Thopters and we haven't drawn extra cards, and our opponent is still in a pretty good place. They can just play Thrasios again, and we are a little low on stuff. We have no way to kill Thrasios, so I figure get the extra cards here. They probably don't have Daze. They have not been playing as though they have Daze for the last couple turns, and then I've been able to resolve some big spells, like Breya 2 turns in a row. So here's hoping this works, that they didn't draw Daze off their Tymna here. We're to cast Deluge, and yes, resolves. Okay, fantastic. So we've cleared the board out. We have a slight advantage in hand. We can kill the sword, which is great. Opponent plays Thrasios, which is really good at undoing card advantage. Man, that commander is powerful. They play Avacyn's Pilgrim, and we go ahead and this turn we play Crucible of Worlds. So we did have the option to pause it for a second. We had the option that turn to play Breya and hope that Breya's Thopters could just stop them from getting into the sword. And having Breya on the board always feels really nice and secure, especially because they can't hit us with Tymna there. On the other hand, getting Crucible of Worlds down is going to be really important to the later game, making sure that I can keep making my land drop to keep grinding. And if we do just play Breya, there's always the risk that they just kill Breya again, make Breya really expensive, and then suddenly, if they have a Swords to Plowshares or something, they can use Thrasios, keep drawing cards. And basically, I want to make sure that I can only play Breya once I have enough mana to kill a commander with the extra, 2 extra mana in her ability. Don't want to just play Breya into danger and have her possibly just get killed for no value by a Swords or a Fatal Push or a Dismember. So we go ahead and we just Kolaghan's Command, kill the sword, kill the elf. This does let my opponent go ahead and get him with Tymna. This Wasteland doesn't matter very much thanks to Crucible of Worlds. So they play Tymna, hit me, draw an extra card, but now we get to play Breya and kill Tymna or Thrasios, which is really good. Opponent slams Birds of Paradise, which does not have any power, so don't need to worry about that hitting us with Tymna. And now we have the Crucible of Worlds engine going, and now from this position we're in very good shape. So there's still some close calls for the rest of the game. Oh, Moto, come on Moto, come on Moto. Uh-oh, Magic Online has gotten stuck. Maybe we can somehow push it to the end of the turn here. Oh, ay, ay, ay. What a problem. Alright, so Magic Online seems to be frozen. Just to briefly summarize the rest of the game, we played Breya. We made sure that Tymna was completely uncastable. They did use Thrasios a bunch of times, which was kind of scary, but again, their deck doesn't really play Emrakul. They don't have a huge finisher. So we were able to pretty comfortably keep pace using Factor Fiction and Skullclamp with the Thrasios. And eventually we just got enough creatures on the board that even though Thrasios could keep being recast, we could keep killing it with Breya, and we were attacking with a Palace Jailer and a Snapcaster Mage and a Breya, and they just ran out of life before they could run us out of time or find something to get back in the game. Crucible of Worlds gave us too many chances to recast Breya, and Skullclamp gave us too many cards. So that's how this game ended, which brings us to the very last game of the tournament. Uh-oh, Magic Online has frozen. I need to stop the recording. What's going on, Magic Online? I think that I will just go ahead and... There we go. Okay. So Magic Online froze for a second. We're back, and now we have the semifinals against my arch-rival, Punchaleno. We've played each other a lot of times. We've commented back and forth about a lot of decks. Punchaleno really loves that Crown Tymna control list that we played in round 6, which makes sense. It has a pretty good matchup against Breya, frankly. I think I might be a slight underdog. My hand looks very good here. And then we have Skullclamp, and we have Duretti, and we have a Force Spike to maybe stop an early play. So if I can somehow... We don't have any red mana, which is a problem. I wish this Flagstones of Trickhair was maybe an inspiring advantage now, but I don't know. Flagstones of Trickhair might leave. Armageddon might also leave. It's just a little awkward having a single white producing land in this deck, this 4-color deck. Anyway, we just need red mana, and the hand is incredible. So we do something maybe a little foolish here and play Skullclamp on turn 1. The Tymna Crown deck runs Inquisition, Duress, and Thoughtseize, so there's not a small chance they just have one of those, and yep, it's Thoughtseize. So much for Duretti. We could have just kept up Force Spike and avoided this whole problem, but they just take Force of Will. Taking Force of Will is interesting. I feel like I have no other blue cards in play if you just take Force Spike, so that seems safer, but we just draw a useless Godless Shrine. If it were a Sacred Foundry, this game would have gone a lot differently. But all we can do is, they know our hands, they can play around Force Spike all they want to. They're just going to leave up a counterspell in case we try to cast Duretti. And, well, we draw a Talisman, which is reasonable. That lets us next turn play like Breya with Force Spike back up or something. So we're going to try it, and then They have the best possible counterspell. Memory Lapse. That's very bad. So we have the option to Force Spike this. We really don't want to draw this Talisman again because we need red mana to play Ready or play our commander. This might have been a bad keep, I don't know. So we kind of have to either Force Spike the Memory Lapse or try to Force Spike their commander next turn. So my choice is that I want to say, okay, this Memory Lapse, use the Force Spike for Tymna next turn because I really don't want my opponent to resolve a Tymna. If they do that, they can just, if they get Tymna down and I don't draw a red source, they're just going to start attacking with Tymna over and over again. I'm going to die. That card advantage stockpiles really quickly. So I end up holding onto the Force Spike. They know about the Force Spike, so I know they're going to play around it, but I just want to stop them from playing Tymna for a turn, and they have Cavern of Souls, so that's not going to work. And yeah, the rest of the game is pretty brutal. Tymna comes down. We'll just kind of fast forward from here because there were not very many meaningful decisions at this point. We draw our Talisman again. Oh, no, yeah. So possible I should have just Force Spiked the Memory Lapse. We would have drawn something else this turn that might have helped. Opponent attacks, draws an extra card, goes to 6 cards to my 2, plays an uncounterable Dark Confidant. Uncounterable just for the heck of it, why not? Can't counter it anyway. And yeah, so had we countered the Memory Lapse, our opponent would have played Tymna. We would have drawn Knight's Whisper this turn. We could have Knight's Whispered into Daretti, sacrificed the Skull Clamp to kill Tymna, and then they would have played Bob, but we could have played Breya or something, so Memory Lapse was just a little too much value. We had to hope we had a red source as our next card, and we really didn't. So we might have misplayed a little bit here, but, well, we're going to try it anyway. We have Daretti. Opponent counters. We Force Spike. Alright, Daretti gets down, but we don't have any spare mana to use the Skull Clamp, which is real bad, so our opponent can kill the Construct and kill Daretti. They can just play Crown and kill Daretti. I'm just hoping that we somehow find a Toxic Deluge and can kill all their stuff at once, but yeah, they're drawing several cards a turn. They choose to kill Daretti. I have 4 cards in hand. All we can do is play Breya. And this Mana Leak helps. This Mana Leak at least means that the Snapcaster Mage isn't going to work. So we do have Breya, and we have Skull Clamp, but it's our favorite land, Seachrome Coast again, sitting here making sure that there's just no way we can ever draw cards here. So that's a little sad. And our opponent hits another land off of Bob. He's not looking at first. They have Sword of Feast and Famine, which is really gross. So, again, possible we misplayed here. We do block with a Thopter to stop our opponent from drawing a card with Tymna and to stop them from untapping their lands. It's entirely possible that a better play was for us just to draw 2 more cards with the Skull Clamp, leave the Thopter be, and hope we find that Toxic Deluge. But at least our opponent's tapped down. We draw 2 more cards off the Clamp this turn, but yep, here's where the play lots of really cheap cards and fewer big hitters strategy fails me. We draw a Mental Misstep, Pithing Needle, Duress. Duress, see a Force of Will, Knight's Whisper, take the Knight's Whisper because Force of Will is kind of a big clunky counterspell. We just need our opponent not to be able to draw more cards, but at this point the game is over. We can't kill Bob. Bob's going to hit us. Nothing we can do about it. If we had gotten the Pithing Needle down earlier, or we could kill the Bob. So my hope here is, this is like a last-ditch effort, we put Breya in the graveyard, sacrifice Breya to kill Tymna, hope we would draw a Lightning Bolt or Swords to Plowshares, because at that point we could bolt the Bob, or Swords the Bob, play Pithing Needle on the sword, and have our opponent close to empty-handed with a Breya we can maybe cast. But yeah, it's kind of pointless. We don't draw anything that stops Bob, and at this point the game is over. They can play Crown or Tymna, hit us for a bunch of damage, take one of our cards, untap their lands, play their other commander, or hold up Force of Will, and we're just never coming back from it. So we maybe didn't play the tightest. Going to be a close game either way. I think that Dark Confidant plus Force of Will was going to be tough. They mentioned that they probably misplayed by not using the Force of Will aggressively enough. They could have just countered Daretti, and we wouldn't be able to stop them if they had just exiled Snapcaster Mage or something, but who knows. Anyway, they do have the Cavern of Souls, which kind of crushes us, and that is how the tournament ends. But Breya is a really strong deck. I would certainly play it in this challenge again if I had the opportunity. I think Tymna Crown is probably the other best deck in the format. I think they probably have different strengths and weaknesses. Tymna Crown can just get ground out by raw card advantage sometimes because you don't get to play cards like Skull Clamp. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. A lot of games I know, a lot of real marathons, but I'm mostly recording this for the folks in the Commander 1 vs. 1 Discord chat. You should definitely come join us if you want to talk about this cool format. Leave a comment in the YouTube and I can send you a link. But yeah, thanks for watching, and this has been another episode of Low Fidelity Commander. See you around.